Welcome to the Unshaken Men's Podcast, where men are built, not born. I'm your host, Jonathan Miller, bringing you real talk for real men, rooted in Christ. Like and subscribe wherever you're listening, and check us out on Instagram at Unshaken Men's Podcast. Joining me today for the very first episode of Unshaken Podcast is Kenny Bevers. Kenny is the founder and CEO of Dynamic Leadership. He's the co-founder of Unshaken Men's Ministry, a leader of men, a husband, a father. He leads the Act Like Men's small group, as well as he co-leads the Day 22 men's group with me on Monday mornings. Kenny is not only one of the best leaders that I know, he is an amazing example of a godly husband and a father, as well as one of my closest personal friends. Every time that I talk with him, I walk away sharper, more challenged, more encouraged, and more focused. So he's someone that I trust deeply, and I couldn't think of a better person to help me kick this off. So let's jump right in. Kenny, when you think of the term biblical manhood, what comes to mind?
First, let me say it's an honor to be here with you, and I completely reciprocate all the feelings. Biblical manhood is I believe, a mandate to step into leadership or to fall under leadership in every situation. We're not called to dominate. We're not called to force our way, but we're called to lead, and that's really the right word. But we're called to influence our families and our situations to be in alignment with what God has for us. So, you could spend hours on that one question, but it's quite simply, it's either to be led or to lead in every situation.
How do you think that we lead others well?
Yeah.
Start with, how do you lead your family well, and then talk about how do you lead other men well.
Yeah. I think your family is your most important one. Truthfully, for me, leading your family is where I came to appreciate the weight of leadership. With your family in particular, you will answer for your household. No one else has that calling. No one else will have to answer for them but you. And I think I subscribe to the leadership definition that John Maxwell pushes that says leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. I truly believe that's the best overall definition of what a leader is. And in the family space, that's exactly what you do. You don't dominate, you don't demand, you influence. And if you lead well, if you lead in a way that your wife can respect you, that's just, you influence things, you influence situations. And sure, there's moments where you have to say, as head of our house, this is what we will do. But if that's your go-to move, you're doing it wrong. And so, it's exactly influencing your wife. It's influencing your disciplines. It's influencing your kids. It's influencing who they're surrounded by, who you're surrounded by, because all of that together influences the way that your kids and your wife will grow and what you'll have to answer for ultimately.
Yeah, I always think about that your kids, and honestly I believe your wife will imitate so much the things that we do. And you and I've talked so many times about the stories of Colt, your son, and Colt is 5, right?
Colt is 3. He'll
3,
be
okay.
4 later
I
this year.
overshot that. He is a grown man for 3 years old. But he always imitates you, and honestly, in the good things and the bad, right? And so you told me a story the other day about you were working out in the garage, I think it was, and he wanted to go upstairs and show mommy how to do push-ups with you. And so I think it's really cool how they imitate, your family imitates you in the good and the bad, and how important it is that we set an example of servant heart and leading well, so that our family follows us.
Yeah. One of the most simple examples of that, but one of the most, I think, important is how we lead on Sunday morning. My son will never question if we are going to church. The answer is yes. He knows that. He doesn't know his days of the week, but he knows Sunday we get up and we go to church. Yeah. And it's not just that we go, but we serve, because we're not just called to be participants. We're not just called to take it in. We're called to be a part of it. We're called to be a disciple and to I like the way Joby Martin says it, is we're called to be disciples who make disciples who make disciples who make disciples. And so if we're doing it right, we're doing it in a way that leads to the next steps, not just for our own family, but for others. And so that's what I want my son to see, is that, yes, we're going every Sunday, but we're pouring in. We're not just getting poured into.
We're not just consumers on Sunday mornings.
Yeah.
That's really good. What are some of the key ingredients of a godly man? We actually have discussed kind of the 10 elements of a godly man recently in a men's small group, and that teaching has really stuck with me a lot. So share with the people listening, what do you think a couple of those key ingredients of being a godly man is?
Yeah. I think when you break it down, I think the most fundamental characteristic of a godly man is they have discipline. And I think if you look at most people's lives, they have discipline in some area. But most people don't have discipline in the important areas, right? Most people don't make intentional effort to be in control of their own lives, to make the decisions that make them better. Whether it's working out, we choose to be lazy, or whether it's, waking up early to be early places and not just barely making it on time. I think discipline's the most important item. Going beyond that, I think it's servitude, acting as a servant. I prescribe to servant leadership. I think most people appreciate that when they're on the other side, but a lot of people don't want to actually be the servant leader. But one of the best ways you can influence anyone is by serving them. And if you're disciplined and a servant in your approach, I think the rest of it is a little easier to fall in line.
I think that being a servant leader, and also some of the other, I guess, kind of just teachings that we always talk about, like choosing joy even when it's hard, it sounds so good. And it is so hard to actually practice. Yeah. How do you practically practice serving when you don't feel like it?
Yeah. I think one of the most important things we fail in is in reflecting, because we can't do everything. We can't be good at everything. More importantly, we can't get better at everything. And so there's a book years ago I read called The One Thing. It's pretty straightforward. It says, what's the one thing that if you change makes the greatest difference? And so the way we grow in our disciplines is that we identify the one that will make the most difference, the one that matters the most. And we actively attack that one. Because if you try and get better at everything, you'll exhaust yourself and not see progress, and you'll quit. But if you'll identify the one that matters, you prioritize your disciplines, you'll see a difference, but everyone around you will too.
Yeah, that's good. Moment of authenticity, and that's honestly one of my biggest goals in this podcast is I want it to be real and authentic and just normal conversations. Like, we're on the phone yesterday, and I told you this, if we could have just recorded our phone conversation yesterday, it would have made for an incredible podcast episode. And so that's kind of my goal for this, is just for honestly the wisdom that you have and you always are sharing with me for us to record it, and other guys that I love and respect as well. But a conversation you and I had recently where you kind of spoke into my life was you told me a piece of advice that I needed to hear really, really badly. And you said, Jonathan, you have got to learn to be mediocre at some things. And it was in a season of my life where I was trying to be the absolute best at a lot of things, pretty much everything that I was doing. And I was burning myself out extremely quickly. And so I needed to hear that. Learn to be mediocre at some things so that you can be excellent at other things.
Yeah. How's that going?
It is going much better. I feel a lot more rested. I feel a lot better about, so a couple of the things that I was really pursuing excellence in that was just not necessary. It wasn't an area that was glorifying God, was bodybuilding and my own self-image, and I was struggling really bad with body dysmorphia at the time, and so I was crash dieting and doing all these unhealthy things, and then also trying to do ministry and be a husband and all of those at once. And so now that I've kind of sat down and reevaluated, like, what's really important in my life, what do I really want to be excellent at? Well, I want to be excellent at being a husband. That's my number one job, just like you were talking about. My number one job in my life is to disciple my wife, Amanda. And that's the most important thing for me. So I had to learn to
put her as number one priority, do ministry as my number two, obviously with God and pursuing my relationship with God being my absolute number one. But kind of now that I've narrowed it down to the couple of things that I think God's given me to steward, as well as my own marriage being my priority, I feel a lot more rested. I have a lot more energy, and I do a lot better. I'm more excellent at those couple of things versus kind of striving for excellence in several things and not exactly reaching excellence in all of them, and sacrificing the things that are important. So thank you for that advice, because I really need to hear it. And that kind of leads me into something that I think is so important, because if you hadn't have had the authority to speak into my life like that, I would have probably kept going for a little while longer, and I would have really burned out. I was on the edge, but I would have really burned out hard and crashed badly. And so the reason that you have that authority to speak into my life in that way is because I've asked you to be what we call in our men's group a corner toter. And so for the audience, a corner toter is someone that will carry you to Jesus even when you can't carry yourself. And so Kenny is one of those for me, as well as my friend Connor, and I'm in the process of asking a couple of more right now. But will you kind of tell everyone a little bit more about how we kind of studied that, what came about, who your corner toters are, and just kind of talk a little bit about that and how they've impacted your life? Yeah,
so the idea of the corner toter is the story of the lame man who his friends carried him to Jesus to be healed. And it's such an interesting story because it doesn't just show that this man believed in Jesus. It means that all four men who carried him, who knows how far, and then dug through a roof, they all believed it so much that they were willing to pour out all afternoon and all of that energy into digging through it. And they had to be exhausted, but if you believe it's a one-way trip, you can go a lot farther.
Yeah.
And so being surrounded by men like that who will carry you to Jesus when you don't have the energy to do it, or you don't have the discipline to do it, or when you've completely burned out everything on your own, it creates so much more opportunity to recover and to get back in line, and honestly to get back on the road before you end up all the way in the ditch. And may or may not be the direction you thought I was going to take this, but I think an important thing to realize is, for anyone, people don't change until they see the need themselves. And so in your case, I let you get to the edge of burnout so that you could feel a little bit of, yeah, you're right, I've got to change. Because if I hadn't let you get there, it would have been a much more difficult conversation and probably had much less progress.
Absolutely.
But if we have the four friends who we've pre-given control, we've given them authority and permission before they need it to speak into our lives. It opens doors to speak more freely, to speak more, to speak to them like a man, I guess is really the way to say it. To say the things that need to be said, whether it's comfortable or not, whether it's the thing you want to hear or not. But you've given that right. It's not taken. That allows a layer of trust that when they do come to you and say, "Hey, you've got to quit, or you're gonna completely fail at something," you have reason now to trust them. You trusted me because you had already given me permission to speak into you in that way. So yeah, if you're living right now without corner toters, it's a dangerous and lonely way to live.
Yeah.
I don't want to live that way.
Yeah. You always talk about how one of your passions is to help men who want to be helped. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah. So, quick background on this is I heard somebody ask, it was actually John Maxwell asked Pastor Chris Hodges, "What are you passionate about?" And I realized I couldn't answer that question. And so I thought, all right, that's a great question. It seems simple, but wow, it's not. And so I spent 2 or 3 years seeking, what am I really passionate about? And I didn't know how to find that, but I just paid attention and looked for what were the things that at the end of the day I could say that was an incredible day. And then on those days, what was it that made it good? And over time, I found I was passionate about helping people. And that was completely wrong because I realized there was another time where I had opportunity to help people and I had absolutely no desire. And what it was I needed to dig a little deeper. I am passionate about helping people who want to help themselves. And then through time, I've learned I have a special interest in that passion of helping people who want to be helped, in helping young men become everything they can be if they want to grow. If you want to grow, I'll give you everything I've got. If you don't, I have very little interest in pouring myself out to help you a little bit when I can pour a lot into this person and be an absolute game changer.
Absolutely.
And so it really comes back down to prioritizing where you're going to spend your time and effort and energy and discipline. Is, you can be in the middle of a 4-way tug of war and go nowhere, or I can pull on one side with all the intensity I have and make a big difference. So I'm focusing on people who want to help themselves, and I'm helping them with everything I've got.
Do you think that we can grow as men alone?
Yes, because we serve a holy God who can create the situation around you. I believe Moses grew in his 40 years in the wilderness because God was preparing him to lead people for 40 years in the wilderness. Mm-hmm. But I think that's the rare case. Jesus didn't make friends and then send them on their way. He met friends and walked with them every single day for years.
Yeah.
And that's the relationship I believe he modeled for us to be a part of, to have our inner circle and to have those that we spend time with.
Yeah. Not only that, but he also sent the disciples out in pairs.
Yeah.
When he sent them to do miracles in his name, they all went in twos. They didn't go by themselves.
Right. Exactly right.
I heard a quote today that I loved, and I just would like to honestly get your take on it. It said, "It takes a whole healthy man to make another man. We are not born with this. We don't come out of the womb knowing how to be a good man. It is taught to us. You are raised in it. And if a man is not raised and taught by a man, he is never going to be a whole man."
Yeah, I agree with it, is I guess the short answer. I do think there's a lot of wisdom in realizing we grow more in community, but I think we grow even more with mentors and overseers. Corner toters fit somewhere in that. We learn more by witnessing people who have been through stuff we haven't been through yet, by being able to go to someone and also by giving them permission to speak into us. In your case, I was able to tell you were going to burn out because I've burned out. I recognize it. I was maybe doing something different. I wasn't bodybuilding at the time, but I was absolutely striving too hard at too many things, and I know the feeling. And if you have to get there on your own to learn from it, I'll let you. But if you'll take advice and take adjustment, make correction, I'm all in favor of being there for that.
Dr. Darius Daniels said in a Highlands College chapel recently, he said, the reason you have mentors is because a mentor can teach you in a few minutes what it took them years to learn.
Yeah, that's so good. I think the same thing goes for reading too. Any aspect where we're trying to learn, it should be from somebody who's done it before. I think your mentors have to be areas where you need growth. If your mentors are all areas that you're already good, they're not mentors.
Yeah.
They're peers at best.
That's good. How has community, being around other strong men, shaped you in your own life?
Yeah, this is great, and I wouldn't have brought this up, but this is an area where I failed blatantly for years. I don't know if you know this. So growing up, I always knew my goal is to be that old guy who has his coffee, who doesn't say much, but when he speaks, everyone's quiet because they want to hear what he has to say.
Yeah.
And, I thought, well, how do you do that? Well, you get in small group with the old guys. Mm-hmm. And so I sought out small groups with old men. And it was incredible because they poured into me. I learned so much from their experience. But then I got to a season of life where I needed guys to do life with. I needed guys who were in my same season of life, and I had very, very few. None that were close, geographically or any other aspect. And so really it was just a few years ago I got plugged into a Bible study locally who went through the book of James, verse by verse, just men. And I realized immediately, like overwhelmingly inside me, that's what I was missing. And it sparked a season of growth that I had never experienced before that. I had great mentorship, I had great wisdom poured into me, but I didn't have people who I could walk that wisdom out with. And so it made it a very difficult season. I'm grateful for it because it got me where I am now. And I'm grateful for it because it helped me recognize in my own wife when that was what she needed. I was able to tell you, hey, you need to be praying over your wife that she be surrounded by godly women her age who can pour into her. And it wasn't because your wife needed, like your wife's a bad person, needs help. It was absolutely the opposite. If your wife's a good person, you should be ensuring that she's being nurtured and grown. And it's the same for us, right? A lot of times men like to just suck it up and do hard things for the sake of doing hard things, but that's not the point. We should do hard things because it makes a difference for what we're called to do, for who we're called to care for. And community is huge.
Yeah, that advice that you gave me was another pivotal moment and another reason I'm grateful for your friendship because, like you said, my wife she's incredible. I mean, I don't deserve her. She's literally the best thing that's ever happened to me besides Jesus. But she was in a season where she didn't really have a lot of close girlfriends that she wasn't pouring into. She didn't have a lot of peers or people that were pouring into her. And so I think that's a perfect example of what we talked about early on of discipling your wife and stewarding your family well, is when I shifted my focus in my own prayer life and started praying over her that she would find those girls, that they would be brought into her life. And now she's got just an incredible group of friends, including your wife, Ashley, has become one of her closest friends recently. Yeah. And she just has an amazing group of girls, women that just pour into her and she pours into them. And to see the fruit that's come from that, the joy in her life, because of that community that she has found, like you and I have found in our men's groups, has been truly a blessing. So, speaking of the men's groups, this podcast is called the Unshaken podcast, right? So we tell the audience, it's kind of a really cool story. How did we get here? Like Unshaken. Yeah. How did the name come about? Talk a little bit about the retreat that we did a few months ago.
Yeah. So this all started, you and I got invited to breakfast. So I didn't know Jonathan, but he was the fit guy at breakfast. So,
the one downing all the cinnamon rolls.
You bet. Don't fight it. But he ended up inviting me to a Saturday morning breakfast, actually at this table, just pouring into men. And it was powerful. I recognized it immediately as this is something I need more of. And it wasn't because you were awesome. It was because you were faithful. And, you've heard me say this a lot. We're not called to be good and fruitful servants. We're called to be good and faithful servants. Yeah. But through that, we started growing closer and closer together as we were both committed to seeing men grow, whatever that looked like. We were okay if that was around cinnamon rolls, or we were okay if that was something different. And we found out about a friend who would take men out in Montana, and do these long, hard excursions, if you want to call it that, in the wild. Cook
Bear
your own
country.
stuff. Yeah, just these crazy things. And we were like, "This sounds incredible." And you sent a text that said, "Hear me out. We go on one of his trips." And I laughed and said, "Stop it," because I would probably get on board and do it. So it's not the right move. But we said, why don't we, why do we have to go all the way to Montana to do it? Why can't we bring something like that here and pour into men right here who maybe don't need 2 weeks, but maybe they need a weekend? So we ended up brainstorming. You took it real serious, so I knew you were really going to make this happen. I was not getting out of it. And we ended up doing a trip where we went camping with 6 men.
There were
7?
7 of us total, so us plus 5 others.
And the rules were very simple. No technology all weekend. We were going to do a hard thing because we believe men grow shoulder to shoulder. We were going to just facilitate conversation. We had a quiet time on Saturday morning that was kind of guided if you needed it, or free to do it as you please if not. And we really just spent time connecting with men, being in God's creation, and doing doing a hard thing. We ended up doing an 8-point-something mile hike that I ran out of water on like mile 4. So, we did hard things together, and, it bonded us, but it was also just a great sort of restart for a lot of men. And, I think all men crave that kind of connection, and I believe men crave that to step up into something difficult, but it's got to have purpose, and this had purpose from beginning to end. So Unshaken was the name that ChatGPT helped us create.
Shout out ChatGPT.
Right, but it was something we really believed in, is that we are trying to not build men who are strong, but we're trying to build men who can stand on their faith, who can stand firm in difficult seasons, maybe when no one else can. I'm proud of it.
It was an awesome trip. I had so much fun. I ate a lot of food too. I had 2 boxes of Little Debbie cakes.
Yeah.
We're gonna notice a trend here that I ate a lot of food. Man, what an awesome trip, and it has been an honor to have you on this first episode.
Likewise.
I did want to, as a parting question, or one last question, if you could leave men with just one challenge to live unshaken, what would it be?
Yeah. Reflect on where you are. I'm going to look at the camera for this. Reflect on where you are and find the one thing that will make the most difference. Because it doesn't matter if you make a change if it's not something that you'll see a difference, because you won't commit to it. But when you see something that I can actually grow here, and I can take an actionable step, and I can actually start moving the right direction towards what God's called me to be, it'll change everything.
So
You'll be fired up to do it. It won't feel like the hard thing.
So good. Thank you, Kenny.
Thanks for listening to the Unshaken podcast. Stay strong, stay rooted. Like and subscribe wherever you're listening, and share this with a man who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below. Let us know how we're doing, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram @Unshaken Men's Podcast. See you next time.